Hey guys, Pierre here again. Yesterday we talked about how to assemble the X-axis roller, and you can see that the X-axis roller is the part that has the motor mount on it, so the one that I'm showing right now. And the only difference between this part and the Y-axis rollers, I'm going to put them side by side so you can see them. You can see on the Y-axis roller here you have little recessed nuts that go into the main portion of the part, so that you can actually clamp your tool head in this area. Whereas with the X-axis roller, there's just a motor mount. The assembly procedure is exactly the same for the two pieces. They are actually the same dimension, lengthwise, widthwise. Again, they're identical. The only difference here is one has a motor mount, the other one has recessed nuts. For these recessed nuts on the Y-axis, you're going to need to actually get, I think these are 1/4 inch by 3 1/4 inch long recessed nuts. So get ones that have the little hex socket in them, so you can actually screw them in the part. I did not need to heat the part to do this. I just threaded the recessed nuts in here from the bottom, so from this side into the part up until you reach the top section of the part here. Don't try to push the recessed nut all the way to the surface. You'll see the part actually, the hole is actually small enough such that the recessed head is supposed to be a little below this top surface I'm sliding my finger on. Okay, so anyway, that's how you would assemble the Y-axis parts. So I'm going to put this there. You're going to need 2 of these assemblies. And for today, what we'll focus on is how to attach the NEMA 23 motors on the X-axis rollers, and we're going to do that for both sides. So I'm just going to film how to do it for one side. Again, it's the same procedure, you just repeat for the other side. You will need 2 of these assemblies here, so I have one in my hand. You're going to need another assembly like this. Alright, so you can see I printed and already assembled my 2 X-axis rollers. So here's the one that will go on the left side of the machine. This is the one that will go on the right side of the machine. Again, these are identical. I try to design these parts so that it doesn't matter what orientation you put them in. Different people will choose to mount their motors differently. The motors are made so you can actually mount them flush on this face like this. And if you have extra long rods, you can actually push the rods to the outside and run your belt on the outside. But for this design, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount my motors inside such that there's a spacer here, and that will allow me to run the belts a little bit along the middle of this part here. So let's go ahead and start doing this. You'll see that I have NEMA 23 motors. The NEMA 23 it's just a spec. It just says that the face of your motor here is supposed to be a certain length by a certain width. Usually the thickness of your motor will vary. If you want a NEMA 23 motor with a lot of torque, get ones that are a little longer. The ones that I'm mounting here are from Anycubic. I just happen to have extra NEMA 23 motors on hand. So if you don't, you're going to need to buy some. And I wouldn't get ones that are more than, I'd say don't get motors that are more than 3 inches long. Otherwise the motors I think might just be too powerful for the belts. So that's it. These are Anycubic 23L like lion 9104 XCS. So that's what these motors are. They're 0.9 degree per step motor. Okay. So let's go ahead and assemble this. I'm going to take one side, and what you will need is 4 roller bearings. So you can see here that I have the roller bearing. I have the roller bearings set up so that I have 2 roller bearings that I'm going to stack on top of one another, and then I have a little washer with a 1/4 inch opening that just goes on top of the bearing assembly like this. I don't know if the camera is catching that. Probably won't know until I record the video, but until I process the video. But this is what the bearing assembly looks like. Okay. You will also need one of these adapters here, actually two of these adapters rather, they're inside the X-axis motor mount folder. So you'll need two of these adapters. You'll also need one of these spacers. So I have my assembly here. I have my two wheel bearings. I have my rollers. And I have my adapters and spacer. You will also need screws that are small enough to fit into these openings here. You can either get one screw that's 2" long by 5/32 of an inch, or I went to Home Depot, or Lowe's rather, and I got these 6/32 by 2" machine screws. So you'll need 4 per motor. You'll also need the stainless steel hex nuts. So 6/32, just make sure you get nuts that are going to thread onto your what do you call these again? Screws. Whether you get Phillips head or hex screws is up to you. I got Phillips head screws because it's going to be easier for me to actually hold these with the screwdriver while mounting the motor. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and put the assembly together for the roller bearing. So I'm going to grab my two wheel bearings here. I have a little washer right on top of the wheel bearings. Don't know how well you can see that in the camera, but I'm going to take the little roller adapter and I'm going to stick it from the bottom into the wheel bearings. Good. So there you go. So you can see here, if I get a little closer, I have my adapter that goes from the bottom to the top of the wheel bearing, and then the washer just sits right above it. Okay. So I'm going to take that whole assembly, and then we're just going to stick one of the screws from the bottom side of the motor like this, and you're going to just slide your adapter assembly on the whole thing. So yeah, bit of a pain to slide it over there because I guess my 3D printers didn't make everything smooth, but let's go ahead and push that in. There you go. So we have the adapter in there with the wheel bearings. So I got 1, 2, and then put the washer. Okay, and do the same thing for the other side. So take your screw, stick it from the back of the motor. You can stick it from the front of the assembly if you want, but the reason I'm putting my screws this way is because once I put the machine together, if I need to take the motors out of the assembly, out of these rollers, it's easier for me to actually access the outside of the space versus crouching under the machine to try to reach this side of the motor. So I'm going to go ahead and put the adapter. And then put the wheel bearings and the coupler and the washer. Okay, so once you have that set up, go ahead and stick the motor right through the motor hole openings. You can mount your motor so that the wire is maybe sticking on the sides if you want, but I don't think it really matters for me. I could put it so that the wire is just facing in any direction really. So there you go. Put that in there, and then grab the nuts. Should have taken them out before. So grab the nuts and then just tighten them like this. Okay. Okay, don't tighten everything down yet, so the wheel bearings should be able to just freely spin. You need to attach the spacer. Okay, just stick it right in there. And then grab your screws, bolt them from the back, and add the nuts. So just grab a smaller screwdriver and tighten that section. Repeat the same for the rest. Again, I'm sticking the hole right back here through the motor hole. Sticking the screw right through there. And then putting the nut in the front, holding it with my finger, and then using my screwdriver, tightening the entire thing. Good. There you go. Nice and tight. Again, don't over tighten this. These are plastic parts. You don't want to break them. Tighten as far as you can go, and then maybe a quarter return, just to make sure that the whole thing is snug. Repeat for the top screws. Again, turn once, and that should be good enough. Your wheel bearings should be able to freely spin. Double check these wheel bearings when you buy them. I've gotten a couple that were bad, that were not able to just freely roll. And there you go, your motor assembly is right there, nice and strong. And we're going to repeat the same thing on this piece right here. So once you have your motor assembly put together, the motor is mounted, and just take a look at your pulley. Make sure that the entire width of the pulley is aligned with the wheel bearings. They should already be, especially if you got the 10mm wide bearings versus the 5mm wide bearings. But in any case, just kind of push the bearing forward and push the pulley rather forward or backwards to align it with these bearings. Once you've done doing that, we're going to then couple this whole assembly to these two pipes. The pipes that I'm using here are, let's see, these are, I believe they're 1 and, we should measure these a little bit. The outer diameter of these pipes is 1.5 inch, so 1.51 inches. So that means the ID is going to be about 1.36. Anyway, if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, these are 1.5 inch what do you call those again? Electrical conduits. Usually when you buy them, they're going to be 10 feet long each. They're like $10 a piece. So just get 2 pieces, cut them in half, and that will make one of your axes. And to cut them, I use this pipe cutter here. It's a Husky pipe cutter. You just kind of hit the release button here, wrap it around your pipes, tighten it, and then spin the whole thing over to cut them. So this is about, I don't know, I guess $20 at Home Depot or Lowe's. In any case, let's go over and assemble this. When you put this together, you want to make sure that the little belt hook piece here is facing towards the inner portion of the rail, so it's facing the middle of the machine. So mount it so that the face of your motor faces outside of the machine. Okay, gonna do that. Put the piece here, put the other piece, and you want to mount this piece first because this is going to allow you to align the rest of these other rods here. Okay. So put that there, align them. I'm not going to fully tighten everything right now, or at least we'll put the entire thing together, but we're not going to permanently set the screws yet because we might need to cut these pipes a little short when putting the whole machine together, if you want to make things look nice and fit it, so to say. In any case, grab the pipe caps these are held together with these are 1.5 inch long 1/4 inch hex nuts, screws rather. So you're going to need 4 of these per cap, meaning that for this whole piece here you're going to need a total of 8 of these nuts and the 1/4 inch washers, obviously. So put the whole thing there, tighten by hand initially. I'm just going to grab the screwdriver here and set it to setting number 6 so that I don't over torque these. And again, it's a gear number 2 if you have the same screwdriver as me. I'm going to loosen it a little bit because there's a small piece of the metal tubing sticking out of here, and I don't want to ever accidentally cut my hand on here. So I'm going to loosen it and then just push the tubing a little bit further in. Okay, there you go. When this thing is all fully built, I'll print other pieces that will go over the tubing so that your wires don't get cut when they essentially slide along the sharp edges of the pipe here. But anyway, let's go ahead and tighten this. I'm talking way too much. Pretty sure you're getting bored. Okay, so X-axis is all good to go. This is what it looks like. The belts are essentially going to run like this, and then go, maybe you may want to route or mount your motor so that your cabling is on the side here, right? But then again, I'm going to pull out this motor and then I'll mount it. I'll rotate it 90 degrees so that the wire faces one of the edges here. Just because when I mount the belt, I don't want this motor wire to be in the way. But anyway, this is what your assembly looks like. Mount your wire, couple this side, and then we're going to mount the Y-axis pieces in place, and then we're going to assemble and put the other piece, the other end of the X-axis to build this whole assembly here. Okay, so I'm done rotating the motor. You can see I rotated my motor 90 degrees so that the motor cable is now exiting from the side and going into the tubing on one of these axes. So that way when the belt runs along this area here, it doesn't actually jam or catch the wire. So what I'm going to do is I am going to now slide the Y-axis pieces onto the rails. Want to make sure you don't ding these things. I mean, they're not that high accuracy anyway, so but you still don't want to bend them. So grab your Y-axis roller and then just roll it in. Alright, there you go. Okay, so there you go. We have the Y-axis rollers on. So at this stage, you now want to go ahead and take the other X-axis assembly, so the other group of this assembly here, put it together and attach it to the end of the rolling assembly. Okay, we're gonna finish putting together the Y-axis shortly, but you gotta first make sure that this other piece is coupled to the end of your gantry, so to say. For the other piece, you don't want to fully tighten it because we need to be able to push the tubes in and out so that when we're putting the machine together, we can adjust things as needed. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. All I'm going to do is put the motor mount on here, on this other piece here, and I'm going to go ahead and screw it onto the other end of the gantry. Now, Some of you may have noticed that I am running some Ethernet cables as my motor wiring. I actually decided to grab Cat 6, so Cat 6 cables, not Cat 5 cables. You should get Cat 6 Ethernet cables because the Cat 5 cables I think are rated at a lower current capacity than Cat 6. So Cat 6 I think handles, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like 2.1 amp per wire. I hope that I did not misread that, but according to the Cat 6 specifications at room temperature, this should be able to handle 2 amps per wire. Not that I'm going to be driving these motors at 2 amps anyway without cooling, so but I figured, what the heck, I mean, it's already twisted pairs, so I used that instead. Anyway, let's go ahead and mount the other side of the gantry here, of the X-axis roller. So you'll also notice that on the side here, I don't know how well you can see it in the camera, but I drilled a hole on the side of this pipe here so I can actually run the wiring for this motor through the pipe and have all of my sensor, including the end stop that I currently have here. I'll show you how to mount this later. The end stop that I have here, I'll have all my wiring come out of this one tubing here, just to kind of keep things clean. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue putting this together. Again, you want to make sure that this side is a little bit more on the loose side, so you can actually slide these pipes back and forth. Because if you can't do this, when you're putting this whole assembly onto the chassis, then you will have issues. You will need to loosen this side here. So let's go ahead and mount one of the caps. What you should do is leave these loose. You can see I can kind of wiggle the washers about, and that will allow me to kind of push this assembly forward and backwards to adjust these two rollers to the pipes that will be going this way. Okay. So that's it for the X-axis. Next step is you need to assemble the Y-axis. And that is a simple matter of you just grabbing 2 pipes. You should cut these, again, same dimensions. This entire machine uses the same type of piping. It's 1.5 inch electrical conduit from Home Depot or Lowe's. Again, just cut the pieces that you want. In this case, these should be the same distance, the same length. You can see I kind of overcut them so they kind of stick out of these pieces. Not necessarily going to be a big problem. I'm a little bit adamant about things being the same size, so what I'm going to do is I kind of measure these 2 pipes and mark them so that they are flush with the end of the Y-axis pieces, and I'm going to just use this pipe cutter here to cut off these other pieces here. So alright, there you go, one part done. Fits in there mucho bueno. Gotta go do the other part. Alright, there you go, all done. Now if you are friendly with the guys at the Home Depot or Lowe's while buying your pipes, simply ask them to cut them to the right size. When I have the whole machine put together, I'll take some measurements and we'll see how these things fit. Again, I did not fully put together the SOLIDWORKS assembly for this new version, so we're just going to adjust things as we go. Hopefully there's nothing that needs to be adjusted. So alright, so you have the pipes for the Y-axis in place, and guess what? It's the same procedure to put the Y-axis together. You grab your pulley parts, rather, so these guys over here, you'll notice that they are all identical. You're going to need 4 of these pieces here. they're all identical, and the only reason I did that is because some people might want to run 2 belts for this axis. I don't know why you want to do that, but it's designed to run very well on 1 belt. You may want to run the belt this way or that way. It's still going to work. So we are now going to go ahead and take 4 of these caps and place them on the top portion of the y-axis tubing here to actually put the whole thing together. Now these are mirrored parts, but again identical in terms of dimensions. You'll see I have 2 of them here for the front, and I have another 2 right here for the side of the machine. Okay, so you need 4 of these total, and to mount the bearings that will be held in place here, you just grab one of the number 6 32 screws, 2-inch long, that we bought earlier. Stick them right through this hole in this orientation. So you're gonna grab your 2 roller bearings. Make sure they spin freely. You're also gonna grab your your bearing adapter. You're gonna stick it right through the 2 bearings like you did before, and you will add your little washer at the end of the assembly. Okay, so once you do that, you once you do that, you will go ahead and stick this assembly in this way. So your washer first, and then your wheel bearing roller assembly. There you go. Okay, so this is how it's going to go in. Press it in until it goes in all the way, and then just add your nut at the end here to tighten the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording and then just put together the other side of this, the opposite side of this assembly here. So you'll have 1 bearing on this side and 1 bearing on the other side, and they'll essentially sit like this. Okay. Okay, so I'm done assembling the wheel bearing assembly for the belt for the y-axis. So you can see in the video there, I have 2 wheel bearings. Okay, and then the wheel bearing adapter goes in from the bottom. Okay, now we're going to take these 2 parts, place one here, place another one right there. Okay, and also place the remaining caps on the 2 other ends here. Note that the other remaining caps do not have bearings on them, because I plan on routing my belt from this corner here from this corner to this side of the gantry. One other thing I just realized is that I was about to actually assemble this upside down, and what I mean by that is, before you screw these pieces in, you need to rotate this entire assembly 180 degrees. So I'm just gonna take that up and rotate it like this, so that so you want to do that so that your motors are facing down and your y-axis gantry is facing, and your y-axis rollers are facing up. Okay, so this is how this assembly is supposed to be. You can see the x-axis pieces have their set screws facing up, while the y-axis has the set screws facing down. Okay, opposite of one another. If you don't do this, then your belt alignment will not line up on the y-axis. So after you do this, let's go ahead and continue assembling the y-axis. Again, the screws that are being used on all of these caps are 1.5 inch long, 1/4 of an inch, and I'm using washers along with every single screw here. So we'll put the whole machine together, and if during operation we notice that the belts are sliding off of these bearings here, then I'll adjust the bearing adapter so that there's a little cap that will keep the belt from falling off. But anyway, it's fine for now, so let's proceed. Alright, everything is nicely put together, and if I move this, you'll see how what the wire assembly looks like. This is it assembled. You can see I could freely move this back and forth. Yep, and there's very little play there, even without me having tightened the adjustment screws. So, all right, so that's it for tonight. We'll go ahead and stop here. If you're wondering how to manage your wires, here's what I did. I used Cat 6 cables, and I also got these Ethernet port headers here, and I spliced the wires in them. So you can get these on Micro Center if you have a Micro Center or Fires Electronics near you. Again, these have 8 electrical pads in them. I don't know if you can see them, but they have 8 pads in them, and that means I can connect up to 2 motors per each of these connectors here. It just makes it a lot easier to disconnect things and connect them again, you know, when you're adjusting things. These are not required. It's just my little cheat sheet here to show you how I manage my wiring. Okay, that's it. I gotta go to bed. Bye.